The Apex Collective moved through space with complete confidence. Their ships were massive and sharp-edged, built to look powerful even from a distance. Dark hulls reflected the cold light of nearby stars as the fleet crossed into the outer edge of human-controlled space. To the Apex, this moment felt familiar. Many worlds had fallen silent before. Many leaders had chosen surrender the moment Apex signals appeared on their screens. Fear was a tool the collective understood well, and they believed it worked faster than patience or talk. From the bridge of the lead vessel, Apex commanders watched their displays with calm certainty. No resistance fleets formed. No warnings were fired. No threats were sent back. Human space remained quiet. To the Apex, the silence confirmed everything they believed. The humans were afraid. They always were, in the end. Far away, above Earth, an orbital station drifted in steady orbit. It was not large or impressive by military standards. Its design was smooth and simple, built for communication rather than war. Inside a small command room, James Calder stood with his hands resting lightly on a console. Soft blue light from the screens reflected across his face as streams of data moved slowly past. James did not look tense. He did not shout orders or pace the room. He simply watched. Sensor feeds showed the Apex fleet advancing in perfect formation. Their movement was clean and controlled, like a blade sliding from a sheath. Around James, the room remained quiet except for the low hum of systems and the soft voices of technicians reporting status updates. Fleet speed unchanged, one officer said calmly. Communications channels open, another added. No hostile signals detected. James nodded once. He had expected nothing else. He had studied the Apex long before this moment. They followed patterns. They relied on fear and reputation. They liked to be seen before they acted. Behind a transparent partition, a group of diplomats prepared quietly. Jessica Hale reviewed notes on a thin display, her expression focused but steady. Michael Reeves spoke in a low voice to another advisor, carefully choosing each word. There was no panic in the room. No rush. No raised voices. It might have looked like an ordinary day to an outsider. That calm was not an accident. James remembered the first time he had learned how other species viewed humanity. It had been during a training briefing years ago. Humans were labeled unpredictable, stubborn, and emotionally driven. Some reports described them as weak because they avoided early conflict. Others warned they were dangerous precisely because they waited. James had learned then that humans did not show strength the way others expected. On the main screen, the Apex fleet grew larger as it approached sensor range. Their ships blocked out stars, casting long shadows across the void. Apex symbols pulsed across open channels, projecting authority without words. It was a display meant to crush resolve before any battle began. James exhaled slowly. "They're doing exactly what we thought," he said quietly. Jessica glanced up from her notes. "They want us to speak first." "And we won't," Michael replied. "Not yet." The Apex commanders interpreted the continued silence as confirmation. In their experience, quiet meant fear. It meant leaders arguing behind closed doors. It meant populations waiting for instructions that would never come. The collective believed humans were no different. They did not see the deeper movement happening beneath the surface. Across Earth, systems activated in quiet coordination. Messages moved through secure channels, passing between places the Apex did not even know existed. No alarms rang. No public broadcasts were made. Humanity had learned long ago that panic helped no one. James watched a new data stream appear on his console. Confirmation codes. Timelines aligning. Everything was moving as planned. "Diplomatic window opens in 5 minutes, a technician said. James nodded again. Let them speak first. He knew the Apex would demand surrender. They always did. It was part of their ritual. They believed forcing others to kneel without resistance proved their superiority. But James also knew something else. The Apex believed they stood alone at the top. That belief was their weakness. As the minutes passed, the orbital station remained peaceful. Outside the viewport, Earth rotated slowly below, blue and white against the black of space. From this distance, the planet looked fragile. Many enemies had thought so. Many had been wrong. James allowed himself a brief moment of reflection. Humanity had not survived by being the strongest or the fastest. It survived by adapting, by forming bonds, by remembering past mistakes. Humans did not rush into fights they could avoid. But when they acted with purpose. A soft tone signaled an incoming transmission. The Apex emblem filled the screen, sharp lines and bold colors meant to inspire awe. "They're ready," the technician said. James glanced toward the diplomats. Jessica straightened her posture. Michael closed his display and stepped forward. There was no fear on their faces. Only focus. Open the channel, James said. As the screen brightened, the Apex voice began to speak, formal and commanding. Their words carried certainty, backed by centuries of conquest. They spoke of order, of compliance, of consequences. James listened without interruption. He had heard it all before, just in different languages and from different mouths. The Apex finished their message and waited, confident the humans would now bend. Inside the command room, silence followed. Not the silence of fear but the silence of choice. James met Jessica's eyes briefly. She gave a small nod. Humanity did not announce its strength. It never had. It prepared quietly, waited patiently, and acted when the moment was right. And the Apex had no idea what they had just walked into. The Apex envoys arrived exactly when they said they would. Their transport ship detached from the larger fleet and moved toward the human orbital station with slow, deliberate motion. Its surface was dark and polished, marked with glowing symbols of rank and authority. The ship did not request permission to dock. It simply announced its arrival, assuming acceptance was already decided. Inside the station, security teams took their positions, calm and alert. No weapons were raised. No alarms sounded. The corridors remained clean and bright, light steady, air calm. To the Apex this too looked like weakness. They believed humans were trying to appear peaceful to avoid punishment. The envoys entered the meeting chamber moments later. They were tall and rigid, their posture stiff with practiced dominance. Their uniforms were sharp, decorated with marks of conquest. Each step they took echoed across the smooth floor, meant to command attention. Jessica Hale and Michael Reeves stood at the center of the room, waiting. They did not bow. They did not challenge. They simply stood, hands at their sides, faces neutral. The lead envoy spoke first. His voice was controlled and loud, carrying confidence shaped by long success. He spoke of the Apex Collective's power, of the many systems already under their control. He listed worlds that had resisted and suffered for it. His words were clear and rehearsed, spoken many times before to many weaker civilizations. He then delivered the demand. Earth was to surrender authority over its space. Human fleets were to stand down. Resources would be shared under Apex oversight. In return, humanity would be allowed to exist. Jessica listened without reacting. Michael did the same. Neither interrupted. Neither asked questions. They had expected every word. As the envoy continued, Jessica quietly noted the assumptions buried in his speech. He spoke as if Earth had no allies. As if humans stood isolated at the edge of space. As if fear was already winning. Michael noticed it too. The envoy never asked what humanity wanted. He never asked who humanity knew. He spoke as though the Apex were the final authority in the galaxy. When the envoy finally stopped speaking, the room fell silent. The Apex representatives watched closely, waiting for signs of fear, anger, or submission. Instead, Jessica smiled slightly. "Thank you for your message," she said calmly. Her voice was steady and polite. "We understand your position." The Apex envoys seemed surprised. They were used to protests or panic. This response did not fit their expectations. Michael stepped forward next. "We will need time to review your proposal," he said simply. "Such decisions require care." The lead envoy's eyes narrowed. "Time has already been given," he replied. "You will answer." Jessica nodded once. "Of course," she said. "But it would be disrespectful to respond without full consideration." The words were chosen carefully. Polite. Calm. Non-threatening. The Apex had no clear reason to object. To refuse would suggest impatience or doubt, things they did not want to show. "Very well," the envoy said after a pause. "But understand this. Delay will not change the outcome." "We understand," Michael replied. The envoys turned and left the chamber without another word. Their footsteps echoed again as they exited, confidence restored in their minds. They believed they had delivered a final warning. They believed the humans were buying time out of fear. As soon as the doors closed, the room changed. Jessica's smile faded, replaced by focus. Michael tapped a control on his wrist. The walls around them activated subtle shielding, sealing the chamber from outside listening devices. "They didn't ask a single question," Jessica said quietly. "They never do," Michael replied. "They already believe they know everything." Across the station, James Calder watched the meeting through secure feeds. He allowed himself a small breath of relief. The envoys had behaved exactly as predicted. "Signal window?" James asked. "Open," a technician replied. All channels clear. James nodded. Begin transmission. Far beyond the station, beyond Earth, signals began to move. They did not travel openly. They followed old routes, quiet paths mapped years ago through trade, research, and shared history. These signals did not carry threats or cries for help. They carried information. They carried truth. They spoke of apex expansion, of demands, of the moment now unfolding. Across distant systems, receivers activated. Some were in peaceful stations. Others were on worlds that remembered old human kindness. Supplies shared during famine. Aid sent after disasters. Fair deals honored when better ones were possible. None of these worlds owed Earth loyalty. But many owed respect. Back in the council chamber, Jessica reviewed incoming confirmations on a small display hidden from view. She did not smile, but her shoulders relaxed slightly. They're listening, she said. Michael nodded. They always do. James leaned back in his chair, eyes still on the Apex fleet drifting nearby. To the enemy, nothing seemed to be happening. Human ships stayed docked. Weapons stayed cold. Communication stayed polite and slow. The Apex mistook patience for fear. They did not understand that humanity had learned something important long ago. Power did not always come from size or numbers. Sometimes it came from trust built quietly over time. As the hours passed, the Apex envoys returned to their fleet, confident the situation was under control. They reported that humans were hesitant, cautious, and alone. James listened to that report through intercepted channels and shook his head slightly. Let them think that, he said softly. Humanity was not alone. And soon, the Apex would learn just how far a single message could travel when it was sent to the right people. The Apex fleet began to reposition with smooth precision. Their ships spread into wider formation, blocking common travel routes and placing themselves between Earth and open space. To the Apex commanders, this was a show of control. It was meant to remind humanity that escape was not possible and resistance would be useless. On the main Apex command vessel, scanners swept the surrounding space again and again. Everything looked stable. Human ships remained close to Earth. No weapons were powered up. No distress signals were sent. The Apex felt satisfied. They believed they were tightening a net around a single, isolated world. Then a new signal appeared. At first it was faint. A small energy signature at the edge of scanner range. One officer dismissed it as debris or a civilian craft passing too close. But moments later, another signal appeared. Then another. And another. The scanner officer leaned closer to the display. Multiple arrivals, he said carefully. Not from Earth. The Apex commander frowned. Identify them. Data scrolled across the screen. Ship designs varied. Some were old, worn, clearly civilian. Others were sleek research vessels. A few were heavily shielded but carried no visible weapons. None bore human military markings. These ships are not Apex, the officer said. They are mixed. On a nearby human observation station, David Ross stood beside a wide viewing screen. He was a systems analyst, not a soldier, but his hands were clenched behind his back as he watched space fill with movement. Beside him, Lauren Price adjusted sensor overlays, her eyes moving quickly between data feeds. They're coming in faster than expected, Lauren said quietly. David nodded. Once the message went out, I knew this would happen. Humans keep records. So do others. On the screen, a long trade vessel dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Its hull was marked with symbols from an old commercial alliance Earth had joined decades earlier. Not far behind it, a small scientific ship appeared, broadcasting research credentials and neutral status. More followed. A medical transport arrived next, its markings clear and open. Then a delegation ship from a distant system Earth had once helped rebuild after a planetary storm. Each arrival sent identification codes openly, making no attempt to hide. They were not coming to fight. They were coming to see. On the Apex bridge, tension spread. This was not how things usually went. Other civilizations normally avoided Apex operations. Fear kept them distant. Witnesses were rare. Why are they here? One officer asked. The commander's jaw tightened. They are curious, he said. They will leave. But they did not. The arriving ships slowed and formed loose positions around the outer edge of the Apex formation. They kept respectful distance, but they did not retreat. Cameras activated. Long-range sensors began recording. Open channels filled with neutral greetings and formal notices of observation. David watched as new labels appeared on the human display. Trade Union Vessel. Independent Research Group. Neutral observer delegation. Lauren let out a slow breath. This isn't a standoff anymore, she said. It's a stage. On Earth's Council network, messages flowed quietly. No orders were given to the arrivals. No instructions were sent. The human request had been simple. Be present. Bear witness. The Apex attempted to reassert control. A general broadcast was sent, warning all non-Apex vessels to leave the area immediately. The message was firm, legalistic, and threatening. Several ships acknowledged the message. None left. Instead, a trader vessel responded calmly, stating its right to observe events in open space. A research ship followed, citing long-standing interstellar agreements. A medical ship transmitted a short message declaring peaceful intent and neutral presence. Each reply was polite. Each was public. Lauren smiled slightly. They're doing it by the book. David nodded. That's the point. The Apex don't like rules unless they write them. The Apex commander felt control slipping. He ordered tighter formations, more aggressive patrol paths. But every movement was now being recorded by dozens of outside sensors. Every maneuver, every transmission, every demand. The story was changing. What had begun as a simple threat now looked like something else. To the observers it looked like pressure. Like intimidation. Like a powerful force surrounding a smaller one without justification. On the human station, David noticed incoming data from distant systems, not yet present but watching through relays. News of the situation was spreading faster than ships could travel. Exposure level rising, he said. Lauren checked her display. Apex legal channels are going silent, she noted. They don't like this attention. The Apex envoys returned to their command ship, confused and irritated. They had expected progress. Instead they found a growing crowd. This was not part of the agreement, one envoy said sharply over internal channels. No agreement was signed, the commander replied. Humans delayed. Others interfered. They were not summoned, the envoy insisted. The commander paused. They were invited, he said slowly. Just not by us. That realization landed heavily. The Apex had built their power on private fear. They conquered quietly, one system at a time, always away from witnesses. Now their methods were on display. David leaned closer to the screen as a large, unfamiliar vessel arrived. Its design was old, its markings faded. Lauren recognized it first. That's from the Orion Reach, she said softly. They don't travel for anyone. David felt a chill. Earth helped them evacuate a generation ago, he said. No one thought they remembered. The ship took position among the others, silent but present. The Apex fleet now sat at the center of a growing circle. Not enemies. Not allies. Observers. James Calder's voice came through a secure channel to the station. Status. David answered, the room is full. James paused. Good, he said. Let them see. As hours passed, the Apex found themselves unable to act. Any aggressive move would be recorded and shared. Any strike would be questioned. Their strength, once unquestioned, now looked uncertain under so many watching eyes. Lauren watched the Apex ships hold position, weapons still cold. They can't move, she said. They can, David replied. They just can't do it quietly anymore. The narrative had shifted. This was no longer a simple demand for surrender. It was a moment of exposure. A powerful force revealed in the open, judged not by fear but by facts. And as David and Lauren watched the stars fill with distant ships, one truth became clear. Humanity had not called for help. They had called for witnesses. And the galaxy had answered. The Apex command ship remained still at the center of the growing circle. Screens across its bridge glowed with constant updates. Sensor data streamed in from every direction. Observer vessels continued to arrive, each one adding more eyes, more records, more voices. The Apex had faced enemies before but never this. Never a moment where action itself felt dangerous. Commanders spoke in low, tense tones. Every option carried risk now. Any aggressive move could be shared across the galaxy in minutes. Their strength, once feared, now felt heavy and slow. Evidence was everywhere. Records of Apex demands played back on shared channels. Translations of their threats appeared beside calm human responses. Timelines showed how quickly other civilizations had answered Earth's request. Patterns formed, clear and undeniable. This was not a misunderstanding. It was a method. On Earth's orbital network, a single message was prepared. It did not come from a general or a politician. It came from Emily Carter. Emily was not powerful by any military measure. She did not wear a uniform. She did not stand on a grand stage. Her recording was simple. She sat in a quiet room, soft light around her, Earth visible through a distant window behind her. Her voice was calm and clear. When the message began to spread, it was sent openly without restriction. Every observer ship received it. Many forwarded it immediately. Even Apex channels picked it up before command could block it. Emily spoke slowly, choosing words that would translate easily. She did not accuse. She did not threaten. She spoke about history. She explained how many civilizations, including humans, once believed strength meant standing alone at the top. She described how fear had been used as control, and how that control always failed in the end. Her words were simple but they carried weight. She talked about cost. The cost of arrogance. The cost of ignoring others. The cost of believing power could not be questioned. She explained that these costs were rarely paid at once. They came slowly through lost trust, broken trade, and growing resistance. Then she spoke about cooperation. She described how humanity survived not by conquering, but by learning when to listen. How mistakes had been made and how those mistakes forced change. She explained that cooperation did not mean weakness. It meant survival together. On the Apex command bridge, silence fell as the message played. No one interrupted it. Some officers shifted uncomfortably. Others stared at the screen, unreadable. The words were not aggressive but they struck deeply. This was not the response the Apex expected. There was no challenge to meet with force. No insult to punish. Only reflection. As the message ended, open channels filled with acknowledgments. Observers shared their own short statements. Traders spoke of fair human deals. Researchers described shared knowledge. Medical ships recalled times Earth sent aid without request or demand. The voices were calm. United. Different yet aligned. The Apex command felt something unfamiliar. Doubt. They reviewed their own records. Patterns they had ignored became clear. Every conquest had followed the same path. Isolate. Threaten. Control. Move on. They had never considered how many watched and remembered. This was not a failure of strategy. Their fleets were strong. Their weapons unmatched. But strategy had never accounted for reputation spreading freely. 4 cultures comparing notes. 4 fear losing power under shared light. This was a cultural failure. They had assumed all civilizations valued power the same way they did. That fear was universal. That silence meant surrender. They were wrong. A senior Apex commander finally spoke. His voice lacked its usual certainty. They did not gather to fight, he said slowly. They gathered to judge. Another officer nodded. And judgment cannot be destroyed. On Earth, James Calder listened as the message completed its spread. He did not smile. This was not a victory moment. It was a turning point. Emily's address continued to echo through networks far beyond the immediate system. Civilizations that had never met humans now heard the story from many sources, not just one. The Apex envoys requested time. This alone marked a change. They had never asked before. Within the Apex fleet, ships remained in position, weapons powered down further. Patrol routes slowed. Aggression paused. For the first time, the Apex were not deciding the future alone. They were considering it. Emily's final words lingered in many minds. She had ended simply, saying that strength was not proven by how many stand beneath you, but by how many stand beside you when no one forces them to. The Apex command did not respond immediately. They could not. Their mistake was no longer hidden. It was clear, shared, and understood across watching stars. They had believed this encounter was about power. They now understood it was about culture. And that realization changed everything. The Apex fleet did not move at first. For several long hours, their ships held position in silence. Weapons stayed powered down. Engines remained idle. Observer vessels continued to record everything, their presence steady and calm. The moment felt fragile, as if one wrong move could break it. Then, slowly the change began. Apex patrol ships shifted course, not forward but backward. The movement was careful and measured. One by one, larger vessels followed, adjusting formation away from Earth. No announcement was made at first. No message of retreat was sent. But the direction was clear. They were leaving. On the human orbital station, John Miller sat at his workstation watching the live feed. He was responsible for records and reports, not decisions. His job was simple. Observe. Log. Preserve the truth of what happened. He watched the Apex fleet pull back in stages, maintaining order but losing presence. Their sharp formation loosened. Space between ships widened. The pressure that had filled the system began to fade. John took a slow breath and began typing. Apex fleet withdrawal confirmed, he recorded. No hostile action taken. No human weapons discharged. Around him, the station remained quiet. No cheers echoed through the halls. No celebrations began. People simply continued their work, calm and focused, as if this outcome had always been expected. Across open channels, observer vessels acknowledged the movement. Traders noted the change in traffic flow. Research ships updated logs. Medical vessels powered down emergency readiness. The story was spreading already. The Apex command finally transmitted a message. It was short, neutral, careful. They stated their intention to disengage and re-evaluate relations at a later time. There were no threats, no conditions, just distance. John read the message twice before adding it to the record. He noticed what was missing. There was no claim of victory. No demand for silence. No warning. That absence said more than words ever could. As the Apex ships moved farther away, Earth's defensive systems remained inactive. No pursuit followed. No warning shots were fired. Humanity let them go. From the observation deck, Earth looked the same as it always had. Blue, quiet, unchanged by the moment that would soon echo across the galaxy. John paused his typing and leaned back slightly. He thought about how many times history had been written through violence. How many borders had shifted through force. How many victories came with loss. This was different. The Apex had not been defeated in battle. Their ships were intact. Their power remained. But something had changed inside them. They had seen themselves through the eyes of others. They had felt the weight of being watched. They had learned that fear did not work when shared light replaced shadows. John continued his report. Outcome achieved through presence, communication, and restraint, he wrote. No territory crossed. No lives lost. On distant channels, reactions continued to arrive. Civilizations that had observed quietly now discussed openly. Analysts compared the Apex withdrawal to earlier encounters with other powers. Scholars noted the difference. This time no empire fell. No system burned. Instead, reputation shifted. The Apex Collective, once seen as unstoppable, was now seen as accountable. That change mattered. As hours passed, observer ships began to depart. Some sent final greetings to Earth. Others transmitted thanks for transparency. A few simply left without words, satisfied with what they had witnessed. The system slowly returned to normal traffic patterns. John saved the final log and sent it to the central archive. He labeled it clearly, knowing future readers would search for this moment. First contact resolution, non-violent. James Calder passed behind him and stopped briefly. He glanced at the screen and nodded once. Good work, he said quietly. John looked up. It doesn't feel like much, he admitted. James smiled faintly. The most important moments rarely do. Later, as the station settled into routine, John reviewed the complete record one last time. From the Apex arrival to the final withdrawal, every moment was there. Calm responses. Patient delays. Witnesses arriving not to fight, but to see. Humanity's strength had never been hidden. It had simply been misunderstood. The galaxy would talk about this for a long time. Not because of explosions or battles, but because of restraint. Because of unity without command. Because of power shown without force. John added one final line to his personal notes, something not required but felt necessary. The lesson remains unchanged, he wrote. No civilization exists in isolation. Actions are remembered. Choices are shared. He closed the file and looked out at the stars. Earth had learned this truth long ago, through mistakes and hard lessons. Cooperation was not weakness. Patience was not fear. Silence did not mean surrender. The Apex had thought humanity stood alone. They had been wrong. And now the galaxy knew it.